Okay, this brings us to the first call to the public. If anyone wishes to address the board this evening, please step to the podium. We ask that you state your name, address, and limit to 3 minutes.
That's ours.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's great.
Hello, my name is Kevin Sorch. I live at 8360 Woodland Shore Drive. I know open swim is on the topic or on the agenda again tonight. I don't know exactly what is going to be voted on tonight, but I would personally like to see an open discussion on how we come to the decision of what community events, activities we offer in the evening, or what else we do in the pool. As a lot of you know, I'm very involved in at the root of all this, we all know, is that is the time we've committed to the youth swimming in Brighton. And as you all know, that's an activity I'm also very involved in, so I don't take it lightly that I'm up here asking that we kind of cut back on that. I have a daughter who swims. I was a coach for BEST. I was on the board for BEST for several years. But I think if you look at the facts right now, we offer 2.5 times lane hours for youth swimming that we do now versus what we used to offer in the old pool. So I think we need to look at, I know for sure we don't have 2.5 times as kids swimming, and I don't think we're offering that much more to these kids. In fact, we actually don't offer youth diving anymore in the evenings because we don't have time for that. And you can that's what we do offer for the community. Right now we have essentially 48 hours, lane hours for youth swimming. We just increased that at in the last week to 4 lane hours for community events in the evening. So I think there's just a huge disparity there. And so I'd like to hear a discussion on how we've come to that decision and what can we do about that in the future to try to swing that back to the I sent you guys an email already, but just for reference, I printed out the schedule of what the activity used to be like at the whole pool, and also some comments on what they're like. So, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the board this evening in first call to the public? Okay, seeing none, that'll close first call to the public, and we will move to the superintendent report. Dr. Gray.
We don't have any students tonight, so 2 different presentations. The board asked me to put together a presentation about the potential bond proposal that we talked about at the last meeting. This actual proposal has really been around since about 2010 in terms of that. If you look at the last bond, which was executed in 2012 until the end of this summer, the $88.5 million started out as a scope of $127 million. $127 million was derived from a 5-year facility renewal plan where we brought in different construction management firms, architectural firms, and overall surveyors of the district to give us a long-term layout of things that needed immediate action, could wait a 0 to 5 year period, and then beyond that. Obviously, with the $88.5 million, we were able to accomplish the bulk of that $127 million. We actually hit the bid time pretty nicely in terms of the economy and vendors, so we were actually able to accomplish a little more scope. If you take a look at 127 million minus 88 million, it's about $40 million, which would pretty much align with the work that we had left from that original scope. So what I brought in front of you for tonight would be the actual layout. Over the last, I would say, month or so, we've actually done enough, actually 6 months, we've actually done another scope look in terms of the district, and we've broken it down by building in terms of the needs that we see that are still remaining, and we've actually priced it in terms of today's prices. Presently, we're carrying about 32.25% contingency, and I'll break down the contingency costs as we get through the document. So if you look at the first school, Hawkins, in terms of what was laid out, and you've received these documents, the wing that we didn't touch as much at Hawkins was the 4th grade wing. It was a future decided by the former board as a future project. So 4th grade restrooms, 4th grade corridor lockers, classrooms, new cabinetry, lights, ceiling tiles, classroom divider, and learning lab. And then obviously as you go down the document, in all of the different buildings, we've taken a piece of technology. I think our kids, and obviously by the presentations you've seen tonight, have bought in, as well as our parents and teachers, to the technology aspect of our district. And so in each one of these, you're going to see an industrial technology line item in terms of refreshes and whatever's going to be available if this bond were to work its way through completion. So each building was allocated pretty much per pupil in terms of the technology layout, and would pretty much have a re-infusion of the existing technology, whether it still be Chromebooks at that point, or iPads, or whatever the latest and greatest would be at that particular time. Also, at the elementaries, what you'll see primarily are outdoor improvements. We've put money into playgrounds. One of the other allocations that we did back in the original scope of the bond was we laid out playgrounds, we curved the playgrounds, but we left some additional growth space. As our buildings have become in line with each other growth-wise and size-wise, more equipment obviously would always be an advantage to our students. At Hawkins itself, one of the big ideas that was brought about in the last bond that was pushed down the road was what is called a cloverleaf baseball/softball type facility. All that it means with cloverleaf is you put the concessions or the announcing stands in the middle, and you have a field off of each one, so it looks like a cloverleaf when you're done with it. We've utilized that park a little better in terms of that, and allow for more and larger tournaments, which is going to be a revenue producer for the district. We run a great deal of events at Hawkins because of the outdoor green space that we have there, and this would be one of those additions. Stop me at any time as we go through, but I'm just going to zip through each building.
Good. Go back a little bit.
Yep.
Just the softball, the Cloverleaf softball diamond was $366,000.
Yep.
That seems expensive. Is that just the?
It's actually cheap. The original cost was about $500,000.
Okay.
Some of the work that we've done out there in terms of the drains, some of the rescope of the project that we had previously, we think we can do it a little cheaper.
Okay.
So the original cost was about $500,000.
Okay.
And I think that's rebuilding all the fields that are there, correct?
No, the $375,155 that you see would be building those 4 new. Yep, we're working with the baseball, softball but club programs that we have right now. They're investing some of their revenue as well. They just did Field F, I believe, in terms of that. And they've also bought into redoing some of those fields.
And Dr. Grace, and the field that's closest to Rickett Road is the one where it was just refenced with
Yep.
the donation from the
Yep.
baseball and softball.
The design of this field would be off the auxiliary parking lot where our buses are at the end of the day, and it would take up that kind of dead space that we presently have. The fields that are built out in the back are utilized heavily by anywhere from probably 4th grade teams all the way through 9th grade teams. But the rest of the fields, again, these would serve baseball, softball, and you're probably looking at 200-foot fences in terms of that, so it'd be geared more towards the younger kids up front.
So the varsity, I mean, the high school varsity would still play at the high school. This would
Correct.
be used for
Yep.
the JV and the.
Well, remember, you also have the fields at Scranton as well.
Okay.
We've spent a lot of time and effort on those fields as well. Hawkins is probably our best draining property in the entire district. It's complete sand. It's the easiest place to build or renovate parking lots for some odd reason. Whereas Scranton is probably the worst ground that we have in terms of clay, which is odd because they're right next to each other. But yeah, this would allow the size of summer programming and a little bit of during the year high school / 7th and 8th grade programming to exist. And you'd be able to bring in much larger weekend tournaments or summer tournaments, which again is not only a revenue generator for the school system, but it's also a pretty good revenue generator for the town itself.
And contingencies, you have construction, you mentioned contingencies earlier. That's just if things end up costing more expensive than what the original.
So I'm going to jump into it now just so you know. So when I said we have about 32.2% contingency built into all of our numbers right now, that sounds high, right?
But what is, before you even.
I'm going to break it down for you.
Okay.
Yep, so contingency in a construction project is multifaceted. So when you're at the early, what I would call the conceptual stage right now, you have conceptual drawings, you have conceptual pricing. So you want to make sure you have enough cushion in the budget to where if you hit a bad patch of ground, or you hit a gas line that you didn't know was buried, or a water line, that you have the ability to do it. Because what you don't want to do is not build something that you said you were going to build. So when we put in contingency, there's a number of different things that is a part of it. It whittles its way down as the project goes. So once we get to schematic and then DD eventually, in terms of the design, the numbers become very, very clear and the design's done. So our contingency, we can move our way out of the numbers. So an estimated contingency of about 10%, a project contingency of 3.24. Our A&E, which is our architectural, is about 7% right now. Our CM, so in our CM, we break it down to about 4.5% in our CM, because you have about 1% for testing, 0.5% for permits, 0.5% for general liability, and about 2.5% if we chose to go with the CM. Now, we've also talked about the fact that with the size and scope of these projects, especially if we did them over 2 or 3 summers, you might not need a CM, but you might. So we might as well build it in originally. General conditions are about 7.5%. That gets you to your 32.2%. And again, as you go through the bond, that number whittles down eventually and it goes away. The testing 0.5%, some people do, some people don't do. I would say the last time we did it, talking about the parking lot at Hawkins, which was right out by there, we found out that through our testing, which we paid for, that the asphalt that they used wasn't up to the compaction grade that we had put in the original bid. So we had them tear it out, and it was at their expense to put in the right asphalt. So the testing can pay for itself. It's about a $75,000 mistake that, you know, the owners of that had to work through. So we feel more comfortable when we have those pieces in there, because it gives us the ability to complete what we say we're going to complete.
So Dr. Green, I have a question.
Yep.
So once it's drawn out like this, that's for a baseball field or whatever it's for, is that modifiable? Let's say we wanted to build a STEM center there, or is that money going to go to a baseball field no matter what?
So here's how I answer that question. You know, typically when you have your bond language, the bond language is pretty generic. I would say if you said you were going to build something and then dramatically change the scope of the bond, you'd struggle the next time you tried to pass a bond because you didn't build what you originally said you were going to build.
So the intent should be in there, whatever you're planning.
Yeah, I mean, now obviously it tweaks. There are different pieces where originally we thought we might have a field in front of the school and it ends up in back, or the HVAC piece of it, we thought we were going to have stand-up units in the classroom. It made more sense to put a chiller on the roof. Again, that comes out when we get into the actual schematic and the DD portion of the design when it whittles down. So, but I would say the general concept is we build what we say we're going to build. In Hilton, if you look at Hilton, corridor carpet, mechanical plumbing, the chillers and boilers there are up for replacement. That building hasn't had new ones since it was built in '91. Media room lighting is also one that hasn't been upgraded. Again, you see the consistent breakdown of the instructional technology. And then obviously their parking lot was one that was in the original $127 million. It was still in good enough shape that it was allocated past when we whittled it down. So what we did as a board, because I think there's only 2 of you that were on when we did, Bill and John, the original bond, or not the original, but 2012, was we had the $127 million. We went line item by line item and worked our way back to the 80.5. So the full parking lot replaced there, and lighting would be one of the bigger projects. Questions on that? Horning got a large infusion of dollars in the last bond. A lot of their HVAC and mechanical pieces were taken care of. That's why you don't see a lot of pieces. Remember, they share a parking lot with Mulpey, so obviously that parking lot's done and it's being maintained very well. There are a couple pieces. If you look again, instructional technology, then at the bottom, there were more outdoor needs in terms of Horning. Right off the back of the building, there was a field, and I'll use air quotes because it was never actually put together as a field. It's a drainage area, but it's a nice green space where if we put some irrigation and reshape it a little bit, that could be a very, very usable soccer or lacrosse or green space concept, not only during the day, but also on weekends. Again, playground equipment for each building, and then some landscaping needs there. Spencer. Again, Spencer got a great deal of infusion of dollars from the 88.5. Again, instructional technology. Their parking lot was halfway done. The main parking lot was in pretty good shape. The actual bus loop area was the new build in terms of that. That also came along and was spurred by some of the drainage projects that were happening along that road at the time. We had to do those things because the drainage was going in. So we took advantage of that opportunity and did that, but the rest of the parking lot would be nice. Also, we would look a great deal at that parking lot. That parking lot is one of our most difficult ones to get in and out of. That is a very busy road. There are no shoulders on that road. That's probably our biggest issue there. If we get a pretty sizable traffic backup, we couldn't put in a turn lane, obviously, in the middle of the road, but I don't know if there was something we could do in terms of a shoulder or something, because we've changed the arrows in and out of that main parking lot, I think, 4 times, because turning left doesn't work, double wings to the right don't work, and it's been difficult. And the real issue on that road is there's just no shoulder, so nobody can go around, and that causes a big problem. When you look at Maltby, probably the biggest area that was left untouched, because most of that building got a great deal of renovations, is cafeteria with the ceiling, lighting, and finishes, acoustical ceiling tile replacement, media center replacement. So those were the areas that didn't make it out of the 127 into the 88. There's a little more boiler work there, a little more mechanical. Cafeteria lighting would be under electrical. Again, more students, so under instructional technology, you're going to see a larger number, because it's a reinfusion for 800 and some odd kids as opposed to the 400 and some odd kids that would be at the elementary buildings. Then again, you see the remainder of the irrigation and some more playground equipment. We've added some playground equipment in Maltby over the last several years, but obviously, the more we put out there, the kids continue to use it.
Before you go on.
Yes.
The playground equipment.
Yep.
Just up a little bit. I mean, it strikes me as just kind of odd that it's $105,000, $105,137. I mean, is this like a...
Most of the time, we try to allocate these things based on usage and based on student population.
Okay.
So at the elementaries, obviously, with their recess, it's utilized more.
Yep.
And so usually we try to work this through some kind of a formula to see what the dollar figure would be for that. They use it primarily at lunch.
Yep.
And so, and if you think 105,000 is a lot, that could literally be one piece of equipment.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not necessarily even asking it seems like really specific that you're down to 50 cents on this piece of equipment. I'm just asking, where does that come from?
There's typical costs and means that are based on real life costs. And so you would take that piece of equipment based on an average price, and then you would run it through the formula of the amount of kids, and as you would calculate it out, that's where, that's how you end up with the odd change that you see up here, is based on the amount of kids with the means cost, as it's called, which is your standard price for a particular piece of that equipment. And then it's ran through the formula, and don't forget, at the end of the day, you make this jive to 40 million, right? At the end of the day, so there's the plus and minuses, and it's just how the spreadsheet or the Excel spreadsheet works.
Remember, in that number too, there's 32.2% contingency.
Okay.
So it fluctuates.
Okay.
Dr. Gray,
Yep.
you identified some of the issues that we've had with some of the parking lots, and obviously the parking lots are being repaved. Is the design fees, or the professional fees for that matter, that we are incurring, does that include having the design professionals look at redesigning the on-site circulation to better?
We do traffic studies, we do, not only traffic studies, we do emissions studies. So a number of our parking lots are not only screened for, first and foremost, safety. That's like when you get to Mulkey and Horn, you can see that huge sidewalk. People, why would you put that? That was put there as a specific barrier for buses versus cars, so you loop. Same thing with the speed bumps. So then we also typically look at emissions, because emissions, if you keep them low enough, you can qualify sometimes for grant dollars. And then obviously we look for wear patterns and how to keep speed down. A lot of people, when I see them in parking lots, complain about how slow it is. That makes me smile, because the slower people go in parking lots, the less likely there is somebody's going to get hit in terms of that. So the speed bumps and some of those things, they're not designed by me, they're not designed by whoever's on that committee. We give feedback on with our principals, and typically there's a bond team within the building that come out and say, hey, I work as the crossing guard here, here's what I think. They gather all that information, they go back, they run it through their tool, their design tool, and then we get a parking lot that would give us the best flow for traffic and the safest flow.
But I think going back to Roger's question, that 32% has specialty consultants
Yeah.
in that number.
It is.
Yeah, we're just not repaving something that may not have been working effectively historically. We're looking at ways to improve, not only.
Always, yeah. Like I could tell you, Scranton has a total rebuild, Hilton primarily is a total rebuild. Those parking lots would be decidedly different at the end of the bond than they are presently, because our patterns have changed, our number of buses have changed, all those things get tweaked. And so we also try to design them for growth, for expansion. We talk a lot with the road commission in case we hear that they might have a project coming, because we'd hate to build a parking lot and then all of a sudden, they're going to put in a left-hand turn lane and they're going to tear out the parking lot we just put in. So it's a pretty sizable coordination effort on all this stuff.
Dr. Gray?
Yep.
Some of this stuff looks like we could pay for out of the general fund. So what's the reason?
You can pay for it all out of the general fund if you chose to.
I mean, like, for instance, carpet and things like that. And in the original bond, we had questions, carpet doesn't last the term of the bond.
I don't know if I agree with that. But
I mean, you're talking 30 years, and it's just an opinion.
when I show you the payoff, it's not 30.
So the benefit, though, to using bond dollars versus general fund dollars, why?
The general fund dollars, so when people build a building with a bond, okay, they pay to build the building, they don't pay to maintain the building. Okay, so that's why you see a lot of school systems with a sinking fund, or they go back every 6 to 10 years for another bond. Because they don't want to pull the money out of their general fund, which goes directly to educating kids, but all of these pieces are a portion of educating the kids. So the lighting we talked about earlier, the lighting projects have an effect in the classroom, and proven out studies could have a positive effect on some of the academic portions in the classroom. So you can look at sinking funds, you can look at bonds, you can look at general fund, and I think we've done kind of a mix of that. So we haven't had a sinking fund in this district since 2011. That's when it lapsed, or not 2011, sorry, 2008. That's when it went away. And so we've been buying boilers, we've been replacing electrical pieces, other things, chiller units throughout the district with general fund dollars. The problem that you get into with that is to allocate $45 million out of your general fund long-term. It doesn't work in terms of our normal budget. That'd be 65–70% of our normal budget, which would be a real challenge to do. And then what happens is if you don't keep up with the maintenance or the maintaining your buildings through capital improvement projects, it builds to the effect that you have to bring a $127 million bond from the board to it back. That's what happened here. For the longest time, some of these things weren't addressed, and so it compounds in terms of that, and then you're behind the eight ball. Good question.
My thought again goes back even to the baseball field. So if I don't support the baseball field, I can say I don't support it, right? During this.
You can.
And
You can say you don't support any of it.
Well, I do support it, though. I got it. The issue is, though, in the baseball field, it's a huge expense for a baseball field. And I have to be shown the needs and why we do a baseball field versus, like I said, if we build a STEM center. And I'm good with the idea, but I want to know why. And if we still build a STEM center in Hawkins, which I think we can, then that they both could be accomplished. So just a thought.
Sure.
Like I said, I got it. But the other do is as much of the regular maintenance things, or not really maintenance, I shouldn't say that, but these things that are afforded by the general fund that would be paid for. And then these interest-bearing things would be permanent structure items as much as possible, in my opinion.
Don't forget, you can't do maintenance out of the bond.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah, we don't do maintenance out of bond.
Right.
That's what a sinking fund would be for.
Right.
That's why you have, those are the only ways to generate revenue for capital outlay
Carpet's
projects.
not considered maintenance? Carpet replacement under the bond? That's
It's
not
a new
maintenance?
product.
Okay.
Yeah. Maintenance would be you're painting something. You're fixing a drywall in a ceiling. Stuff, that's maintenance.
Changing ceiling patterns with mine now.
But they're new ceiling tiles.
I'm listening. Got it.
Anyways, Scranton, probably the biggest need. Again, Scranton was built in '91. A couple of pieces there. When you look at, you got roof, you got corridor lockers, and then there's a large amount of mechanical scope on the front end of that building. It's about $1 million project. We've known it's been coming for a little while in terms of that, and we would recommend classroom unit ventilators as opposed to the piping that's underground right now. The piping that went underground, obviously long-term, the water and the dirt has corroded that. It's causing us some challenges. The air handling units, ductwork, it all kind of flows together in terms of that. And those mechanicals would be one of the bigger parts of this.
What is mechanical equipment and mechanical system controls? What is that?
So when you put in I'm going to use very generic terms, a heater or an air conditioner, something has to control it. In your house, it's a thermostat. School systems are obviously a little more sophisticated than that, and they all have to talk to each other because it's such a large complex. So the control work has to tie to a computer system that a couple of us have access to because we get a lot of power surges, power outages, we get a lot of issues with that where we have to reset the systems for the next day. We had it on Sunday night when a pole went down on Maltby Horning. And we had 2 other ones last week. Last year at the high school facility alone, because we put a sensor on it because we were wondering what's going on, we had 893 power surges through our building in 1 year. Significant power surges where they registered. So the controls themselves allow us to maintain the optimal temperatures for the building so that kids are in classrooms where they can get their work done. So there's usually about a 4-degree variance, 2 up and 2 down. You'll see a thermostat on a wall, twist it all you want, doesn't mean a whole bunch, other than you can move it about 4 degrees. Otherwise, it would throw the balance off. These systems also are glycol typically based systems, where the balancing of the system is the most important part. It probably takes us a full year of any new system that we pipe to actually figure out the balancing aspect of it, because we got to get through a heating and cooling system to understand the intricacies of the building. Because remember, most of these buildings, especially the larger ones, aren't just built. They were built, added on, and that's why the high school is over a quarter of a mile long, because it's had many renovations. So getting those systems to talk together through an end unit is what they call it, is a big piece. And the controls are very expensive, and they're very complex in terms of that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Does this have the additional road off Lee Road for the 2 means of egress and entrance?
No, that would be something we'd have to add in terms of that. We've talked a little bit, I had this before, Mr. Trombley and I talked about the Lee Road. So what he's talking about is if you go to the Scranton property, there's the main drive that you typically go down with the roundabout, you head into the property. The original design of Scranton way back in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, was to also bring a road off of Lee Road. A lot of times we get calls from neighbors on big sports weekends because people park on Lee Road. Whereas if we had a connector that connected Lee Road to the actual property, you could probably push cars and light trucks out there. Lee Road isn't really regulated or identified to have buses, so we probably wouldn't push buses out that way, but you could separate those two, and you could probably pick up an ancillary parking lot as well in terms of that, because a lot of times the sports programs are big enough to where you could utilize both sides of that property.
Well, and also from a security standpoint, if there's ever a catastrophic event at that traffic circle,
Got 2 exits.
you can no longer access strength at the end of the day.
Because it's a single end.
Right.
That's a really good point. Brighton High School. Brighton High School, when we talk about a STEAM center, which I'm going to show you some renderings of here in just a second, it ties right into the first item, the maintenance building, because a STEAM center would destroy a big portion of the maintenance area that we presently have. And so you have a maintenance building which would house the majority of our maintenance equipment. Presently, it's pretty much scattered throughout the district, maybe out at the main football stadium in this particular area where the STEAM center could go, out at the bus garage transportation department by what used to be VG's, now Bush's. So there's a number of different pieces out there. The indoor dome piece that you see is an inflatable piece that would allow an additional utilization of one of our turf facilities throughout the winter time, revenue generator. We've talked about some ideas of working with the city on some also city projects, and for our spring and late fall athletic seasons, like this year is a great example. We're playing 8, 10 baseball, softball games a week right now because we just couldn't get outside, and this would utilize some of that, plus also offer some other opportunities. When I talk STEAM Center, this is what a concept model would look like. The space you're looking at, if you've ever been behind Brighton High School by the tennis courts or the auto technology lab, it would actually connect to that. Let me work my way through this document. So we visited a number of different STEAM centers. Obviously, this is a very, very hot item in terms of school systems, and this flexible space is kind of a premium in all the places we visited. We went to Milan. They have a pretty extensive one. We went to a couple other schools that have different ones, one more traditional, one not. But all of them were kind of based on the concept of flexible space and long-term planning in terms of different classes. I think you could probably filter just about every program in the high school through this particular class at some point. But the main use would probably be tied to engineering, maybe some auto tech. Probably that you could even go to some fine arts routes because there's a little bit of an amphitheater stadium almost in there. And then on and on. Health Ops could also utilize a great deal of this. And again, this is very conceptual at its original stage, but again, is pretty neat. We tuck in where if you're driving behind right now and you go past the auto shop, you'll see a pole barn. It would fit in that pole barn area, and there's a little grassy area behind that. That's kind of a view of what it would be, and obviously you can see next to it are the auto shop with the doors. Really open space, allows it to spill out. It's actually designed to utilize the building in some of the studies as well. You see the peak of the roof that goes out, that's the southern exposure side of the building, a lot of glass, so you can utilize and catch some of the sun. We can do some solar projects there in terms of that, as well as some of the other pieces with the roof and rain collection and reunification of water. So a number of those pieces could be built into the design. This is, again, you see the tennis court, the baseball field would obviously be to the far side, and it would kind of tuck on the back of that property. This would be, if you're driving down 7th Street, it's one of the things we talked about in terms of that is you wouldn't want this huge eyesore, sticking out from high school. We try to, when we build stuff, make it fit in and make it look like it's been there for a while. So that would be what it looks like from 7th Street. So that's kind of a conceptual look at that. When you look at some other high school projects, roof replacement, band room and ceiling finishes, cabinetry, corridor flooring, tile in that corridor flooring isn't available anymore. So that's a challenge. It's also really, really heavy. We're close to load on that. So we can come up with some different ideas in terms of that long-term ceiling tiles replacement in that building. You might think, wow, that's a big number for that. But remember, that building is 620,000 square feet. So that's a big, big area. Mechanical, HVAC at the fitness center, boiler replacements. We replaced 4 of the 8 boilers. We run about 8 million BTUs. Your normal home one might be 20,000. We run about 8 million BTUs. We cycle through the 8 different boilers. We've replaced 4. This would be the remaining 4. And then some more mechanical room upgrades. Again, why is this one the highest in terms of instructional devices? Obviously, the most number of kids. Again, it's based on a formula. The maintenance building itself, again, would push all the stuff that would be taken up by the proposed STEAM Center and some of the other buildings and consolidate it into one place. We talked originally about possibly putting it on the hill there, where we'd like to connect the back drive to the front drive by the new aquatic center. But we've also talked about, and Mr. Tron did a really good idea on this, we have a great site out of the transportation department that could also work very, very well. Probably not near the grading issues that we would have on the backside of that. And then parking lot and drive that you see is what I just mentioned behind the high school by Leaf Lake. And then the parking lot at the football field would be what they call the VIP lot on the right when you come in. That was never replaced because it was still able to be crack filled and sealed until this point.
Do you have any additional chillers or anything for the ice farm?
That would be probably the only other, we talked about it this week, so it's not in the document, but many people might not know, but the way we cool that building is we have an ice farm. So on top of that building, we produce ice all night long, and it's stored in this huge tank, and then all the air that's blown through the high school is blown over the ice. So we have a huge ice farm for that particular building. It might be nice to have a secondary option, even if it isn't as large as that particular ice farm. At least if something were to malfunction, you can still cool the building.
Well, and that operates at capacity all the time, so the idea is...
That was put in back when the building was
Right.
450,000 square feet.
Exactly.
You know, now it's 620,000. So that cranks pretty hard because it's hard to cool a building. There was a 4-pipe system put in originally to cool some of the athletic wing, but that was never.
Okay. Again, what's our square footage in the district? It's
1.3 million.
across the district.
1.3 million. Yep. Miller Intergenerational Center. Again, primarily that building got a lot of upgrades the last time in terms of redoing the building itself. This one would be parking lot replacement. We're seeing some pretty wide cracks. We're still crack filling and sealing, but that one's getting close to the end of its usable life. Community center, again, very similar. This is the back building, and you're looking at doors, frames, hardware. The other area why we need a new maintenance building would be there's about 7 classrooms on the far end near the Sloan Field piece that could be renovated into a CTE wing for not only our alternative high school, but also after-school opportunities for community members. So that would be something. And then the HVAC unit on top of this one, and then parking lot replacement there that hasn't been replaced in quite some time. One question would be, obviously a lot of this involves some of the safety and security pieces that we'll talk about later. We're looking at a security vestibule at that building this summer, so it'd be before we do the bond work. The last one we do is probably a door with a camera system that we're looking for at transportation.
I think we need to add Sloan bathrooms in on this one as well.
So I think what you're talking about is a facility similar to what is behind the high school or out at Scranton. You're talking about a kind of like by the softball field, is that weird? Like bathrooms, concession stand?
Yeah.
Okay. That would be, it's about $500,000. That building for each place was about $500,000. So again, as we rework the numbers.
Well, but again, don't forget, those are built with a particular specialty block that matches everything else,
Yeah.
where there, it doesn't necessarily...
Because it's not close to that.
That's correct.
You wouldn't, what he's talking about is a split face block, which is what...
Branch.
Yeah, and those can be expensive. Finally, the transportation center, a roof, a little bit of mechanical work, a little bit of electrical work. We've put a ton of money into that with lifts, different pits, different areas out there, bus wash. So not a lot of stuff out there. So that pretty much sums it up. This is a chart that I know it's hard to see in the first place, but you can see it gets to the 45 million. But let's talk about the finances. So when we ran our last bond, if you recall, we asked for a 1.19 mil increase, and we sit at 7.19 mils today. That allowed a couple of different things. One, and you can see that right here on our millage, that allowed us to get in the school bond loan fund, which is can be advantageous to school districts. And then it also generated the $88.5 million. So as SEBs have returned and our finances have improved and our ratings have gotten better, this would be the actual payout schedule. So what you see when this pops back up in a second.
Can we put fixing that in the box?
It was for drama. So when you see the two lines, you see the yellow line and you see the green line. So the yellow line is our existing debt. So when you look at our existing debt and you see the 7.19 mils and then you cross-reference it on the bottom there, if you see about 2023, 2024 in that range, you see the 7.19 mils dropping to a 3.95, the year after that dropping to a 1.71, 1.68, 1.54, and then slowly whittling itself away. So if you look at, well, what would it do if we did the $45 million bond? What would that mean to the long-term funding for the district? So if you look at that, we're in, 2018 right now, so if you got to 2024, you can see the reduction, right? If you do the 45 million, it would take you to 2026. So it would add 2 more years of paying the 7.19 mils, and then it kind of drops off the table at that point. It goes from the 7.19 mils down to below 3 in terms of that. So that's why when we've talked a number of times and you look out in the rest of the areas or areas around us and you say, I can't believe these districts are going for bonds every 6 to 8 years. Why is that? Well, when you get to a point where your debt is in good shape in terms of that, that's when it comes due, and that's when it would drop off the table. So that's why you see a lot of districts that do go for different types of votes like this at the different times. So again, if you look at the overall payoff, I think 2041 would be the end of it. So you're not a 30-year payoff. You're 20. Do the quick math on the 18, 23-year payoff, 22-year payoff in terms of that. Dr. Gistinger and I have done a lot of reworking of some of our debt over the last several years and getting rid of some and doing some others, and all of it has kind of lent itself to some good long-range planning that this district can do long after we're gone. So, questions on this graph? This is a pretty important graph.
Well, I think the question, a few years added to it. So the actual cost to a homeowner. So when you look at
Be 2 years at the difference between 3.9 and 2.9. So you're looking at about a mil difference of a drop of about 3. So you're looking about extending something for about 2 years, and I'd say at about an average of 3 mils.
as this was brought to me, though, there's no increase in millage rate in the current tax rate.
That's correct.
The tax would,
Because right now we pay 7.19,
you know,
and you continue to pay 7.19.
it's just it won't decrease.
It won't decrease, it'll take 2 years longer to decrease, is pretty much what it is. So if presently we're scheduled to decrease to below 4 mils in the 2023-2024 school year, this would push it out to the 2025-2026. So it would add to 2 years of the 7.19 mils. Now, remember originally, we had talked about the 7.19 going out to 30 years. And that was where we came up with some of the interest discussions and those types of things. So this addresses all of those issues.
Could we intentionally target trying to get the mill rate down to, say, 6.5? Could we intentionally try to do that? But what would it take to do that, and what would that mean?
That's a better question.
It would depend on how fast your property values are expanding. It would not be unreasonable that we could get there.
Okay.
So some of this chart is based on an SEB, an increase of SEB. So obviously we've had some increases lately. That helps shorten the bond. It also helps. You see the cliff. We call it the cliff, the good cliff. The good cliff is because you're projecting pretty modest growth as you go out. Again, these are also projected on about a 5% sale of the bonds. My guess is we probably get closer to the 3% range, so it could be even less. But again, I don't want to promise less and then everybody gets more. We'd rather do it the other way.
Dr. Chosen brought up another good point, like reduce twice now. So if you can reduce, if we could, again, reduce these things and add to it, and obviously our ratings came down.
You would push it out further.
Well, maybe that's not out of the question. But it would be a consideration for discussion. I think because again.
I don't know how you, and Maria could correct me, I don't think you could take the 7.19 mils and go and say, we'd rather pay 6.25 and extend it out.
Well, because the school revolving fund is in the mix, we have to get to a point where we have to start paying them back.
Yeah.
So when we went into that, we all said, we're gonna keep it at 7.19.
Yeah.
So we'd have to get past the repayment mode before,
And that's pretty much what you see in the good credit. That's where you see it. So, yeah, you could do that. So what would be more realistic, John, would be, let's say you're the yellow line, in your 2023, 2024. Instead of dropping to 3.95, you could say, I only want to drop to 6.25, and you could generate a lot of cash. Remember, when we ran these original numbers, this district could go, and that was at the time, so it'd be even higher now. That was probably 5 months ago. The district could go for about $220 million with no increase in taxes. It just extends it. But as you pick 45 or whatever number you choose or whatever you settle on, or if you even settle on anything, it either walks one way or the other. So at 45, based on our present SCVs and some pretty modest growth, that's where you're going to hit. If you were to go 30, you probably back it up. And if you were to go 100, you push it out. That's just how it works.
Dr. Gray, can you speak to what this potentially does in terms of setting us up for future? You hit on it briefly, but
Yeah,
you mentioned every 6 to 8 years.
Yeah, so let's look at that. So let's say you propose that we go for this in November, okay? And let's say it passes. If it passes, by the time you get to the 2026, which 2025-26 was 7-8 years, right? And you got a year of design in there, so you got to take the year of design out, so you're really at about 6.5 years. If you choose to do nothing, your mills are going to fall from 7.19 to below 3. If you choose again to reinvest, you keep the 7.19. You probably, depending on SEVs, which aren't going to fluctuate a ton in the conservative values we put in, you could look at probably $50 million every 6 years for no increase, and it would only extend it that 6-year period. That's pretty much how it's set up for this district long term, and again, a lot of credit to Dr. Giskin.
Question I have too, but you went through kind of the line items for each of the different schools. And how do we, as a board, make the decision on individual line items that we think this one should go, we want to add this in?
So the way we did it last time with the 127 million was we went through the same document, and if 4 of you raise your hands, it stayed, and if 3 of you raise your hands, it left. That's how we got the $88.5 million. I can tell you the actual projects on here were not only developed by the construction team and the architects and a 5-year facility renewal, but we also went through the principals and the people in the building to say what are things that need to be fixed. And then we cross-referenced it against the 2011 one and said, okay, what was on the need to do in 10-year list? And that's how we arrived at this number. I personally, you do what you want to do.
I mean, the question came up about, as an example,
That's how we did it.
the Lee Road entrance to the school
Yeah.
versus, this item versus that item.
Yeah.
If we wanted to make some adjustments, I was just trying to figure
Sure.
out what is the process by which you.
Sure. So my suggestion, if you wanted to make adjustments, I would say chew on this for a couple weeks. We'll bring it back to this meeting again. And if Bill has, the idea that that road is really necessary, he'd advocate for that, we'd price it. And then it could go in lieu of something, or you could raise the amount. Again, that would be up to you. And that's exactly how we did it on the last bond. 7 members up there sat there, and it was a much bigger list, obviously. It was $127 million, so it was more than 3 times this. And we literally just went item by item, and yep, no, and that's how we got the 88.5.
Well, let me ask you this. What is the timeline of
Yep.
this moving forward?
Sure. So Depends on when you want to vote, if you want to vote. If you recall, there are 4 voting opportunities in the state of Michigan. One's free, the other 3 you pay for. The last time we voted in May, it cost the district about $26,000 because it's a special election. That cost can fluctuate based on if there are any other items that could possibly go on at that time, so you share cost for a special election. I don't know if there would be, we can't predict that, so I'd estimate high, okay? If you go in November, because you're already running elections, you know, the state obviously be gubernatorial, you tag onto that, there's no cost to the district in terms of that. So you have November as an opportunity, you have February as an opportunity, you have May as an opportunity, and you have August as an opportunity. Those are the 4 opportunities on when a school district can choose to vote on one of these issues.
Is there any legislation on that now about when? Is there anything coming?
There's no mandate for school systems, like, for instance, Fowlerville just passed theirs on and up, you know, on their vote. A lot of people go at different times of the year, so.
But I guess going back to more, because this would probably go back to part of Dave's concern as well, is that we as a board would have to vote based on when we think. So for instance, if we said, hey, we want this to go in November, you have to back up from November. It's got to back up, well, we have to go through certain
So
procedures.
let me tell you what that is.
Yeah.
So, let's say you said, hey, we want you to move forward with the November vote. And Bill's absolutely right. You take the November 8th, I believe it is, or 7th next November, and you work your way back on a normal schedule. So you have to have a bond application. It's very extensive. You have to have a treasury date. So what happens is when we put our bond application together, it's stacked this thick. You go sit with the members of the State of Michigan Treasury Department, and you go line item by line item on it, because they don't want school districts overbuilding. You get a margin of building in terms of that, and then they qualify your bond, and then you put it on the ballot. There's a certain time frame for the ballot language. We'd have to be the Treasury, I would say before July would be a good number for us. End of June would be fine. We also have to typically do a enrollment study, which we've already done. The enrollment study gives the Treasury Department the ability to say, you can only build this much because your number is this, in terms of that. And again, that keeps school districts from overbuilding. That wouldn't be our issue on this one, because the only really new facility would be the STEAM Center, and that square footage would not take us beyond the 30% gap.
So one other question I have is, in just looking at this, if we're talking about $45 million, in looking at that over the next, looking at this scope of work that's being proposed, and thinking about what is critical, or what are the implications of not doing it between now and, let's say, 5 years from now? What, and these are approximate numbers, I realize.
So
that.
they're pretty concrete projects. So the HVAC and the parking lots and that are going to fluctuate in terms of the economy.
Well, my question is more related to if we didn't do this.
Yeah.
And over the next 5 years, out of this scope of work, what would we as a community in the district be facing by not doing the set of work that's being proposed?
You could have a couple of failures in a couple areas. The Scranton HVAC makes me the most nervous. The roofing projects are getting close to the end of their life. And what I mean by that is when you put a new roof on a building, the roofing company gives you an expected life. Okay? If you maintain it at a certain level, it should last you 20 years. Okay? Some of our roofs are 23, 24. So we've maintained them a long time. Think about the parking lot at Scranton. That parking lot was put in 1991. Now we're in 2018. That's a long span for asphalt. That's a big life. So
approximate dollar-wise, what would that be?
you'd have to pull out the new structures.
20 million?
I'd say it'd be higher than that, to be honest with you.
Well, and don't forget too, each year you go, you might as well add 10%.
At least.
Yep.
Yeah,
And that's what I'm.
So if you were to ask me in today's dollars, I'd put it closer to the $30 million range. And if you were to ask me 5 years from now, I'd put it closer to the probably $35 million range, somewhere in there.
So what I'm hearing and what I'm getting at is that if we weren't looking at proceeding in some, whether it's a bond or a sinking fund or some
Yeah.
other mechanism, we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of,
The
safe
same-
estimates, $15 to $30 million of infrastructure improvements.
I would say that's very
required.
safe, yeah. And remember, for people that don't know, there's a big difference between a bond and a sinking fund. So remember, sinking funds just had a little bit of legislative change to them. A sinking fund can be used for maintenance. You could paint, you could do all that stuff. But a sinking fund, the difference is you collect the money, you spend the money. There's no payback period. So the thing that you save with a sinking fund is interest. The challenge you have with a sinking fund is you can only raise it based on a mill and you raise it at one time. So let's take the Scranton parking lot as a good example, and you say, I want the parking lot done. Our SEV in this town is about $2 billion. So for all the houses and everybody that pays taxes that would go to this, it equates to about $2 billion. So if you generate one mill would generate about $2 million. So if you raised it, a sinking fund, a mill, you could collect in a summer, because that's when we collect it, you'd collect $2 million. So you'd have to wait 2 years to get enough money to do the one parking lot, and you'd raise taxes by a mill, as opposed to, you know, a different structure in terms of this. Now, the challenge would be you do pay interest on this, but, you know, that's just the difference between the two. Sinking funds aren't really put in place to build big projects. Sinking funds are put in place to maintain stuff. Now, we've done a good job, I would say, in maintaining the general fund dollars and some of the projects we did in the last round. So that's why we personally wouldn't propose a sinking fund in terms of this. We'd look at this option instead.
But, you know, going back to Andy's question, don't forget every time, and I think you'll see this is what happened in the district in the past, is every time you let something go and it continues to deteriorate over that period of time, it only costs you that much more to fix it at the end of the day. So.
Other questions?
A suggested approach, I think, related to kind of the line items. I think going through line item by line item is too much. You know, it's like, I don't think anybody's going to argue if we are told that some building needs a new boiler, then the building needs a new boiler. There's probably, for me personally, there's probably somewhere between, I don't know, a half dozen, 10 items that I would suggest that we vote on individually. Can we open it up so that like anybody on the board can call out these individual line items I would like to bring to a vote? And somehow do that, you know, the week before it comes, just so that it's not, we're not saying that we accept this whole thing.
So it's totally up to you. Again, my job is to give you the factual pieces to this, which is what I've done. Your job is to determine, because you're the elected officials, what you think the community would want or would support. And so, some people do a discussion, some people don't. This would be my 5th bond in my career. Everybody's done it a different way. My former district, we did 3 different sinking funds. They never had the discussion. It was just a need, and they moved forward. The last time, we went line item by line item, but we had a couple of challenges at that time. We were $8 million in deficit, and there were some big items on there. So I think that was why we did that. But that would be up to you, and then we would aid in any way.
Let me ask you a question. Go back to that, your comment. Do you see things that are left off from there that you'd like to add?
I don't know. I think what I don't want to assume is that everything that's in there currently is the perfect plan that we want to approve. And so what I'd like to do is, let's say, the items that, you know, maybe give us a little bit of second thoughts, let's vote on those individually. And also, items that we might want to add, let's talk about those and add those in.
So the add items, where I'm going with that is, you have to put a cost to those.
Absolutely.
There's something we have to put a cost to those.
Absolutely.
So maybe, would it make more sense that if there are those types of things, that maybe email back and forth to start with amongst it, and then maybe compile the emails of each board member
So,
as
yeah,
to what.
so my suggestion is if you have additional projects, we've talked about this in the past, send them to me. You shouldn't send them amongst each other.
Right.
Send them to me. I'll compile a list. I'll get it priced as quickly as I can, and then we could discuss it. I could do a similar presentation at the next meeting, and you could discuss, we'd at least have a price.
So when would we, again, presuming that this would, we're looking at it November, so when, as a board, would we have to vote to say yea or nay on this?
I think personally, it would be very, very tight if you waited until June. End of May is probably a closer number. You could do beginning of June, but we would.
That's our next meeting.
So that's.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would scramble. We would scramble pretty hard to get to Treasury, this is a lot of work, but we serve at your will, so that is what it is.
I have a comment. In the historical, Dr. Gray, the historical work that you've done on the prior bond, the proof's in the pudding and success. And our value from what, again, I remember being here and doing battle on the idea and where we had to go and what we thought had to be done and versus what we did. So you, by percentage, overachieved by a huge amount of projects in different areas. I've seen them at work. So I have confidence in what you're saying. Now, obviously, I think in the same thing, this is Dr. Chesnick's first time through the rodeo on the deal. And I think that there are some things, again, that are dream sheet items that are they're wonderful if we can do it. If, that they're not a necessity for education, they're a desired item. And that includes even the thing I've been working on for years, which should be the STEM Center idea. That we'll continue to produce students without that if that didn't get on the list. But again, it would be very beneficial, I think, to the community and the big picture of things. So some method maybe you could suggest, and I think when we did this last time, we were in a week like that, and you brought it up this week and got me thinking about sitting here that long ago and how really things were real tough. And the choices were made, and there were a lot of things we wanted to do back then, we just couldn't do them, and they were cut. And still a lot of things got done. I mean, we built some beautiful football fields, and a pool got done.
Remember though, athletics was 18% of that last bond. I think a lot of people think that bond was heavily athletically focused because that's the most visible item. But it's 18% of the last bond. There's a lot of stuff that went into the buildings.
And again, those are permanent infrastructure though, and they're going to last, you projected 20 to 40 year kind of life cycle.
For sure.
And again, that's kind of stuff we're looking at here again. And I think it's important. And also the proofs in the pudding on the success of the school district. I think their ratings just came out, which.
Top 3% in the state, Brighton High School, and 3.5% in the nation.
Right. And you're investing, and that's the part that I think as we bring it to the voting public and bring it to ourselves as board members, we're investing. And with those kind of results, it's hard to say, that we have done anything. I'm sure we've changed some ideas, but the bigger scope of things. In general, in the big picture, the district is successful at a level that was probably even higher than a lot of people would have predicted ever. And so anyway, I think it's a great opportunity to think about this stuff.
So I'm thinking that maybe at the next meeting, we can devote some time, perhaps it's in the superintendent report again, we can figure out a place on the agenda, but.
We'll do it the same place.
And I feel like we can move through this document pretty quickly, just go school by school, facility by facility.
Do we need a special meeting?
No, I don't think you do. Again, though, if you have additional projects that you'd like me to price, I need those by Friday at the latest. Because the turnaround on pricing that is not an overnight thing. That's a lot of work. So, because I have to get somebody out there to measure, we have to walk the property, there's a lot of pieces that go into pricing something. So, I would say keep it in reason. Parking lots are probably easier because you just pace it, it's a square foot cost. But some of the other ones are a little more difficult, especially if it's a renovation. Those costs are a little tougher. You're probably looking at $250 a square foot if you want something in your mind.
Scranton parking lot is original at this point.
Correct. actually for its life,
It did pretty
it's,
good,
it's did pretty darn good.
especially in that soil.
Yeah, that's a terrible property clay-wise, a lot of clay, holds the moisture, it's a difficult property.
Remember being in the fields, you know.
Most of our other properties, like the high school and the other, are sand-based, so I'm kind of surprised that parking lot held that long, you know?
Well, as we know, material that they're using today isn't going to last what the old material lasted either, the new asphalt. And
Well, we usually pick the
Grade,
more,
grade.
yeah, we do, you know, and that's built into our numbers, because again,
cost more, yeah.
you know, you're not gonna pass bonds, and things fall apart in 3-4 years. It just doesn't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming to the safety one, all I'm saying here real
Yeah,
quick.
please.
So I was also asked at the last meeting to bring a safety presentation. I'm gonna run through this fairly quickly, just kind of give you a rundown of what we presently do. When you look at the district, this year alone, we've had over 100 emergency drills across the district. These drills include fire, tornado, disaster, lockdown, drug search, shelter in place, and we've also lately been working on cardiac events. Since we were so heavily into the AEDs and trainings in terms of that, we've been doing some cardiac event practice in case somebody were to have a cardiac event, a heart attack, or those things. This year we also, in the first school system in Michigan, practiced a full unification drill. In terms of that, incorporating our first responders across the county, that went very, very well. And we also tested a system for a reunification tool. Presently, we're also using that tool at the high school in a pilot program, just to see if it's something we want to maybe go out for RFP on in terms of that product, where if you go into the high school now and you check into the main office, you need to take your driver's license, slide it into a machine. Let's say you want to go volunteer in a classroom, or you want to go to the media center. You slide it into the machine immediately pulls up your record, and it has a red screen or a green screen. So you want a green screen for sure. If it's a red screen, it's bad, and they call us and we intervene. And then if it's a green screen and you're able to go to that facility, let's say you're going to the media center for an hour to help the media specialist, it will print you a badge, it'll have the location you're going to, and it'll have your picture on it, and your name. So that's been an easily identifiable piece to that. So we're looking heavily at that in terms of district-wide. We're just piloting at the high school right now because there isn't an office that's busier than the main office at the high school just by sheer volume. So we know if we can handle the volume of those machines at the high school, it should be adaptable to some of the smaller buildings in our district. We've done active shooter training. We worked through some ALICE training scenarios. We meet with Officer Parks and some of our other local law enforcement, first responders. They actually come to our drills. So when we have a drill at a property, it's not just us doing a fire drill. We bring our local fire departments, we bring our police officers, we bring sheriffs at times. We do drug sniffs with dogs at times, bomb sniffs with dogs at times. And so we try to vary it so that we get a real breadth of practice. In terms of capital outlay, if you go back to the 2012 bond, security vestibules have gone in everywhere except this building, obviously, and we're looking this summer to finish that. And then again, we'll finalize with a kind of a safety door at our transportation department with, again, the buzzing camera system. We also moved to a swipe card entry system. We had a real key problem here, a real key problem. If I ever couldn't get into a building, I just asked the kid I was walking next to let me in because there were so many keys out there. And so we've eliminated that. We went to a swipe card identifiable system, and we're trying to get down to 1 or 2 keys district-wide, which most people don't need because they have the swipe card and the logs, so we know who's in our buildings when. Mr. Birchford, did you have a question? I'm sorry. Did you begin? Oh, sorry. Doors are on automatic time lock systems. So we have ours set typically to our school day, so that when our kids are in our building and secured, automatic locks go in terms of that, and then obviously open up at the end of the days when we are more community-based. I talked about the badge check-in system at the high school. It seems to be working very, very well. So we've built that dollar figure in our original budget that we looked at into the budget for this year. We have 500 cameras, or almost 500 cameras now in the district, 4K resolution. We don't have people monitoring the cameras on a daily basis, but they are a good system for fender bender in the parking lot, stolen this and item here. It's been a really nice piece for us. We also have cameras that outfit all of our buses. So all of our buses have cameras, and it's a really nice way that we can bring tough situations to resolution because we have a good, accurate representation. Not only are we looking at the slide card system, but we're looking at other pieces as triage kits and other things that some of our community members have brought to us. We have built those into the budget in terms of next year as well when we present them to you. So we are looking at those and listening to the community. We have 27 AED machines now. 5 years ago we had 0. So we have 27 AED machines across all the buildings in the district. This last summer we did a big initiative to do some outdoor ones near our highest use athletic facilities. So, and then obviously we have a lot of trained staff members on the AED machines. Even though we've used them before, they're pretty easy to follow. That training does, in those anxious-filled situations, allow for not a mistake to happen. So we'll continue to look at other areas across the district. We did an audit of these. That's what told us we should have some outside too, and that's why we did that. We do professional development and training, like I said, in that a lot of it goes to our support staff or our athletic piece and our coaches. Talked about earlier in terms of the bond, parking lot reconfigurations. We do spend a lot of time with our consultants saying what's the safest way, that we can get kids in and out of here. A lot of people, again, parking lots are tough in schools, whereas businesses get their customers all day long. At the high school, we get our 21 customers in an 18-minute window, and then they leave in a 7-minute window. So 2,100 people leaving any location that if I leave a Red Wings game, I don't expect to just pull out and drive right on the highway. And so, again, I don't mind the slowness of it because it prevents bigger accidents and it causes less accidents. Fire systems, we spent a lot of time upgrading our fire systems, sprinkles in a lot of our buildings, and just the pole stations and our actual fire systems. And you might think, okay, a fire system, what does that cost? Our high school alone was over $1 million. $1 million for a fire alarm system. So it's big. Our fire alarm systems also have reverse 911 features with lockdown buttons that you can press in the main office that reverse 911 calls and first responders will come. We actually have our insurance company come out every year. We travel the district. Typically Dr. Gissinger walks with them, and they look for opportunities for safety. A lot of them that we deal with would be safety glasses, maybe from some of our maintenance workers. Could be using step ladders instead of chairs. One of the, you might not know this, but one of the #1 issues of injury in the school system are people hanging posters on the wall using a chair like this. It folds on them, they fall, break an arm, break a leg. Millions of dollars a year across the state of Michigan. We've also had some recommendations for some of our parapros for bike sleeves for some of our classes, as well as yak tracks for maybe our bus drivers that are getting on and off of buses in maybe slippery conditions. So a lot of good feedback from that. Weather radios, we actually got a donation from Mr. Birchfield on weather radios because weather can change on a dime. Sidewalks and parking lots, we do an audit of our sidewalks and parking lots each year, and we look for trip hazards. We chisel out our concrete, pour new concrete. If we have trip hazards, we do a lot of crack fill and seal across. And then we look at the human investment. A lot of our professional development now has been mandated to safety and security. We now pay not only our teachers but our support staff. It's the first time district's ever done that. We pay them for 12 hours of training. And then we create a cafeteria plan that allows for nonviolent crisis intervention, bloodborne pathogen, a number of different pieces that we are modularly based in terms of that as well. So that training's gone very, very well. We've had 100% participation on the different levels of it, and I think we have a much more trained staff because of it. We do the safety modules on our computer. We have 100% compliance for the last 5 years in terms of that, and that would be tied to bloodborne pathogens, harassment, mandatory reporter, those types of things. With a package of online pieces that everybody has to go through quizzes and pass them to a certain level, so we certify. Each building is equipped with a crisis team. We worked through that prior to the start of the school year. They're the ones that work through and design a lot of these opportunities, I would say, for our drills, and then they're the ones that get back together and kind of vet what happened during it and come out with recommendations. Emergency prepared posters, I'll show one back. Ken, can you hold it up? It's on my desk for start. We post these throughout the district. It's a quick hitter for us in terms of if you run into certain situations. That was designed at a county level. We have a county crisis team, and then there's also a booklet there that STAR has that is, again, a quick reference for situations that we could deal with. That, again, is created on a countywide basis, so there's some consistency across the five big districts and then other schools in our area. We spent a lot of time with our students at the beginning of the year in terms of safety, how to enter and exit the bus, the sidewalks they walk in, and what the yellow line means. All those are really, really, really important. We push really hard on anonymous tip lines, on presentations throughout the district in terms of different topics, and it's been working very, very well. We do a safety week across the district where we really focus on safety. And then some of the smaller ones would be like EpiPen training, but they're very crucial, or medication dispensing. So if any students have medication, there's a very, very specific way that we have to train people to make sure it's safely done. Our future goals would be to continue focus on relevant trainings. This changes all the time. I can tell you in the 24 years I've been doing this, I've been trained probably 15 different ways to handle pretty much the same situation. There's always commonalities to it, but there are tweaks to it constantly, and staying abreast of those tweaks is a challenge, but something we work very, very hard at. Budget and implement safety equipment, referenced earlier in the document. We spend money on it. AED machines are expensive. We spent $35,000 on outdoor AED machines last year because they're about, if you're going to have a heart event, it probably is going to happen near an athletic field. So that's a big dollar piece. Capital outlay, there's some pieces in the talked about bond tonight. Some of the other social emotional pieces that we talked about is possibly adding some elementary counselors next year, maybe a behavioral coach, additional administrator at the high school, and then our safety committee, which is led by Mr. Vecchione, has just done a really nice job and is really pushing the envelope in terms of looking at every angle to make it the best we can do it. So that's kind of a quick overview in terms of that. I tried to break it out.
On the driver's license scanning, only had to turn away in the test run here.
I think we've had one false positive, and I don't think we've had any really serious one. One was a recruiting person, coach, but it didn't happen to be the right person. So that also allows us to vet that. So it's been a nice system so far. Other questions though?
Is that all summarized anywhere, or just?
I have a document that I'll send to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Good.
Thank you. Okay, that closes the superintendent report and brings us into Board of Education bulletins. As we agreed in our latest workshop, we will limit discussion to 15 minutes in this space. Does anybody have anything Board of Education bulletin for you this evening?
Saw a presentation, I don't recall Diane's last name, Dr. Suri.
Devil.
She put together a program and Malty. And what I saw in the program was, it was pretty neat because we had people from all other school districts, not all of them, but many other school districts. And I got to talk to a parent in the parking lot that had his son at our school and they homeschool. And she opened it up to everybody. And I saw use of a public school building being used in 100% correct fashion. And I got to witness Dr. Suri in action teaching, and she was coaching there for a day. And then I was fortunate enough to get to help the high school robotics students bring their robot forward, and we used it for demonstration purposes and to excite the younger students about what's in front, ahead for them. And I think that it flows into virtually everything, not just robotics. I think that's the key to this, is that it has an opportunity for all youth. Projects like this, I might add, if it's, we're talking about our choir program, we're talking about the drama program, we're talking about all these things that happen maybe as an extra, I call it a supplement now. For me, it was like taking, I was coaching science Olympiad with my kids, and I saw the kids here tonight. It's kind of a supplement to the core education, and Dr. Gray and I discussed it briefly tonight. We'll talk about all the good things that we're doing currently in school. And these are things that may not be allowed because of curriculum requirements to fall into the daily duties of the curriculum, but it sure is nice that we're able to offer it as a supplement. And I would suggest that we look at all areas for students to see what we can do that's healthy for them. And I saw real growth in just the time I was there, in a few hours, and we saw the young people, next thing you know, there, and they made our school their home, which is very important. They seemed very comfortable there. I didn't see anyone that wasn't treated well, that was the kind of culture that we would just, it was very open-armed to the students. And proud to be part of, a very small part of that, but to be able to support it from my position. And we got started early. I mean, she had worked the night before very late, and I ended, and in the morning, I think I met up with students starting about 7. So it was a pretty long day, but they all made it work out. And the other thing that was good is our students, we had 3 seniors and 2 freshmen represented, and they had different things to say. And it was really neat. And the students listened, the younger students, these would be 1st through 6th grade students, really listen to the students versus, we'll call it a senior compared to the older person. And they got a lot from it. And I watched their attention when the students began to speak. And they just went, and I asked the students that were there, the younger students, the grade 1 through 6, I said, how many of you teach your parents how to use technology? And I think they all raised their hand. Would you agree? I mean, all of them. And so it's changing. And we had recently a teacher here tell us about her 3 students, if I recall, there were 3, that helped her teach coding in the 3rd and 4th grade. And that's a whole change in theory, that a teacher would bring her students forward that taught something that she couldn't teach at the time. And I'm sure she's learned it, and they're teaching her. But again, everybody has different gifts, but she knew she needed their help. And that's a big part of where we're heading. We have some really bright young people. I just got the word that one of our 8th grade students that was brought to the high school through a engineering design program. Is that correct, Kevin? Was brought from the 8th grade over to the high school and competed in a statewide contest. The 8th grader just took 1st place in the state of Michigan for the high school. Not as a middle schooler, but as a high school competition. Is that correct?
She won the middle school state competition.
It was a middle school competition. Yeah, okay, but it was middle school level. But she came to high school to learn it. Yeah, but again, great things that happened that hadn't happened last year. We built something new here, and Mr. Johnson is responsible for moving these kids from the middle school onto the high school and seeing what opportunities we can do for them. And I think that's just, again, it just showed someone that was achieving, and we got to see a bright light. And that exposure is good. I had a couple other things, and you can tell me if these are the correct things to talk about. That was from last Saturday. We've talked about our proposed new employees and things like that. Is this the time to do that? Should we do it down? Because we didn't have a finance meeting. We should talk about those things. We don't have any, we haven't talked about the other things like the HR person. We had some difficulty in discussing as we get out there for Dr. Suri's position.
Yeah, those are conversations we have later.
They're going to be in tonight's meeting.
We have that accounted for in closed session.
Okay, well, there's one thing or two I'd like to talk about in open session.
Okay.
One particularly is that our superintendent doesn't have his contract done yet. And there seems to be different reasons for that. But I understand it. And if the people in those committees, let's just say the dates can't be met, there's been cancellations and people couldn't get there, and I understand schedules can change. But we should get people in those committees that can make the dates. And not have that happen. And I think that we're in a position position in the district that, as a board, we're responsible to maintain that solid footing. And I think it's one, it's a respect to the positions, and I think we can do that. I think we have quality people here who can do that. I would like those things as a priority that they're completed. And that brings me to like this HR position and potentially Dr. Surrey's superintendent of curriculum position is our school represents a lot of very talented people. And in our school, we have people that have worked here for years and have worked tireless hours, in my opinion. And it helped us rebuild the school to the level of this top ranking that is just a goal that nobody could have guessed we'd achieve. And I think as we go out to hire staff and look for hiring people, we should certainly look inward. And before we ever go out to look for people, we should see who's interested in our own facilities to take these positions. Now, it gets talked about, but we never sit down and say we should do that. Well, my opinion on this whole thing is that we have some very important positions to fill in our district. We have some very talented people who work here and would be potentially interested. Again, we don't know yet about who knows about finance, but we may have someone here who may even have an interest in the finance position someday. So, thought process is I would like, before we go and throw it out there to, let's say, a talent agency, I'd like to have everybody that these jobs were offered to our own employees, and we know who the people are that would like to apply. And I think it's a respect to where we were and where we're heading. And I'd like to see who's interested. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Any other board bulletins this evening? Okay. That moves us out of board bulletins and into for action. Item A, regular meeting minutes of April 23rd, 2018. Dr. Gray.
Do you recommend you approve?
Do we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of April 23rd, 2018?
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Chesney. Supported by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion?
I have something I'd like to add. Start with the page and then look your next to
On page 6.
Yeah, we're, when Kelsey Adams and Bella Van Buren were recognized with Shining Stars, what I've done is I gave Star a note that talked about who recognized them regarding the DAV commander and Tim Maher and Dick Young, the Brewster County Veteran of the Year, and Charlie Brock, who's the Veteran of the Year. And that they were also represented, they were also recognized as state representative on Vice and Congressman Mike Bishop's office, which I think was a very important thing to notice. So I'd like to have this added to the meeting minutes, and I did give a copy to Star already, so if I could have you review that for me, I think that's appropriate. There was a lot of things going on in there, so it was hard to get any of those names or who they were. And but basically they came out of the woodwork, and the congressman did recognize them, and I think it's a big deal. The state rep, Vice was here present. Right. And these men from the military were, again, just proud to be a small part of that.
We can take a copy, Mr.
This is Jennifer. Before President, I did one thing about the minutes. It was brought to my attention by one of our media specialists that we had the wrong name of the administrative guidelines for the book review. And I suggested that she come to the second call of the public since you're voting for this. Can I just share that with you later? I mean, gives an older form and then a newer form, and the older one is the one that's listed in the minutes. But I'll give you the new, yes,
We can make that.
later on. Okay, just make a note of that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Do you have anything to say? No. You have to look, guys. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passes 6-0. Item B, special meeting minutes of May 2nd, 2018. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Dr. Chesney, supported by Mr. Conley. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by aye. Any nays? Passes 6-0. Item C, certified staff retirement. Dr. Gray.
We recommend you accept the retirement of Victoria Andrus, 32 years of experience and service to the district. Presently, she is a fourth grade teacher at Horning, so we recommend this with a great deal of appreciation.
Do we have a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Stahl, supported by Mr. Myers. Any discussion? We certainly wish Ms. Andrus a prosperous retirement and good health, and much appreciation for her dedicated service to the district. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? Passes 6-0. Item D, open swim pool. Dr. Gray.
The last meeting, we talked about that the topic of this one would be whether we charge or not. We shared the revenue last time. The last 2 years, the revenue's been about $17,000. So the topic, if you want to talk about it or not, from the last meeting was the revenue related to the $4 charge.
Was this supposed to stay as a for future?
No, that one was asked to bring forward in terms of the actual dollar figure. So last time we talked under for future action, and we narrowed it down because we talked about the different hours, the Monday through Friday. And then I asked if this needed to be brought back as for action in relation to the dollar figure, and that's why it's before you. Again, if you want to look at the revenue more, you could, but the revenue's been pretty consistent for the last couple of years, about $17,000. The year we opened, it was a little bigger, about 21, but prior to that, the old pool typically was around 12.
So we aren't voting on lanes, we aren't voting on time, we aren't voting on anything tonight other than whether we want to continue to charge the Brighton area residents.
That was the discussion last meeting. This was never our topic. We're just reporting on what we heard.
So,
I'm not so sure that's what you heard, I don't know.
so
That was the discussion last time, was the dollar figure, but again,
So say there the discussion would be, yes, leave it at the $4 and go with it, or no, we want to drop it.
or you could expand the discussion. Again,
Expand the
that
discussion.
was the general discussion last time, was the dollar figure one, because the conversation dealt with hours last time. That's what we're reporting. Or you can table it, or you can do whatever you want with it.
Again, going back to, if we're purely voting on whether we charge the Brighton residents a fee to swim in the pool or not, again, I'll go back to my original statement, the fact that if they're paying taxes, they're paying twice because they also paid to help build the pool and they paid their taxes to help support the pool. And I look at that and say, you know, why do they need to be charged again? But then, when you look at the history, we all paid for the football games, but we paid $5 to go in and watch the football game every Friday night at the end of the day or more. But again, for use like this, again, $20,000, if that's what it generates, I would prefer not to charge our residents that live in Brighton or that live in the district to pay taxes to go in and use the facilities. I mean, we don't charge people to go in and walk around the track.
It's true.
So,
Go ahead, Mr. Stahl.
I was just going to ask, is that a motion or open discussion?
No, we're in open discussion,
We're in open
right?
discussion, yeah. I mean, I think, I expressed, you know, my sentiments in the last meeting, and I'll kind of reiterate. I think we have, I don't disagree with what Mr. Trombley's suggesting, or even, the rationale behind it. But I think we have a bigger issue with the swimming pool than just whether or not we're charging for the open lanes. And to me, the bigger issue right now is getting that pool cleaned up and managed and run in the way it needs to be run. That means that our community has access to it and can utilize it for a wide variety of events. We've heard from a number of community members and in email and then here at Call to the Public about, different options and less time for pool use, whether it's open swim, whether it's swim lessons, whether it's movie night, whether it's, I don't know, there's a whole bunch of different things, I guess. But to me, that's what I'd like to see fixed before we, I would be supportive of waiving the fee, but I think we have a bigger issue, so.
I have a question on it. The day after that meeting, we discussed that it was one of the worst run facilities we had. And my wife signed my son up for swimming recently. And I walked it. I asked to have doors open and I walked through it. It looks the same as the day we left it. I think it might have gotten a little clarification here, is it's more you're talking about the way it's ran than the way it looks, or the cleanliness of it, or the upkeep of it, because I don't see it. I've looked at it now 3 different occasions, each time my son was at practice. I don't see the mess, I don't see the disarray, and I don't see anything not being taken care of. So is that what you're talking about, or are you talking about the way it's being ran?
I would say that it's twofold. It's the upkeep and maintenance of the facility itself. The locker rooms are not in good shape. They're not clean to the standards that they should be. And number 2, it's the use of the facility and who has access to the facility in our community. So we're hearing from community members that they can't get access to the pool in large quantities of time. And to me, that's the issue we have, and I don't want to spend any more time in a board meeting, frankly, talking about this, other than I think I've made it, my sentiments clear, is just fix the problems and let's stop talking about the pool. This has been 2 years of exhaustion to fix the pool. That's it. It's making sure the facility's clean and benches are not hanging off the wall and make sure that people can use the pool who are paying the taxes to use the pool. And let's give them the programming that they rightfully deserve. I think it's pretty simple.
So just going back to that, since Ken brought it up, I've also gone in and looked just very recently to see what it looks like. And I'll say, it does look like there's an improvement, because I know Dr. Gray said that he was going to have a full-time custodian in there, which I believe. But again, if you look at them, they are not the facilities that were built. If you look, there's paint chipping from the ceilings. There's considerable water markings still on the fixtures, the shower fixtures, the baseboards. There appears to be some type of rust or something on the walls that have encroached there. So again, they're nowhere near the way they were when they were originally built. If you look in the pool, you'll see there, I think we just got another cleaner, so we have 2 cleaners now, but there's still some debris in the bottom of the pool. And again, it looks, I can say, in my opinion, it looks far better than what it has in the past, from that standpoint.
So this item was never brought with any recommendations?
Well, the question I have, as I recall from the last meeting, the issue of the fee was raised as being a topic for action for tonight because of the fact that you're in the process of planning for the budget.
Correct.
It's a revenue piece, and one way or another, we have to decide that. The other issues, while they're issues that have to be looked into, aren't as time sensitive. So I guess is that going to be something we are going to take action on tonight in terms of just the fee piece, or?
We'll be presenting the budget to you at the first meeting in June, so you would have one more meeting. We can adjust $20,000. It's a $73 million budget, so there are options there, but it is a portion of that particular budget, the aquatics budget, which falls under community ed. So that's why it came up as an actionable item, because that was the question last time. But again, we can adjust any time. We would just put it in the budget originally, and then we'd amend it when it came to January.
But again, as we sit down, there's a motion on the table.
There's no motion.
No motion.
Oh, there is no motion?
No motion.
Got it. What are we talking about?
Well,
I was asked to bring back the portion of the fee.
we're
That's
vetting
it.
that out.
Yeah. That's why there's nothing on the sheet.
So do we have a motion to approve?
we need to know what the motion is. I would like to make a motion that Brighton residents do not pay the $4 walk-in fee when using the pool.
Support. Hold on, could I clarify that or ask you clarification? Is that Brighton residents or residents that are within the district?
Because there are people that live in Howell and South Lyon
Within the district.
that have district addresses.
Yeah.
So what you're saying then is somebody who pays taxes to the school system?
Yes.
Okay.
And just for point of clarification, for those who don't fall in within that category,
Keep the $4?
then is it,
I say you raise it to 10.
Let's just try that one.
Serious or?
I charge it.
So we have a motion, we have a motion on the table for waiving the fees of any Brighton area schools tax-paying citizens. And it's supported by Mr. Con. Motion made by Dr. Chesney, supported by Mr. Con.
Roll call.
You got it.
Let me just ask, Leah, we're still in the discussion. Now that we're parsing out who is going to be a payer, who is going to be a payer, how is that going to be?
They'll have to show us their driver's license.
And so that the staff will be able to tell, but the driver's license may say.
May or may not. It is what it is.
I'm just saying, are we?
We're just not gonna budget anything for revenue in that particular facility.
All I'm saying is, are we creating a bigger operational challenge? Right, to ferret out who's actually a taxpayer.
They say they are, they are.
That's,
It's going to cost us money.
it is what it is.
Do we have staff?
We check in everybody that lapses. So, again, I'm not gonna pull out a map and look where they're exactly at. So. That's why we're gonna eliminate that line item as revenue in the budget. I'm gonna guess it's gonna be zero.
Any further discussion? We have a request for a roll call vote for Sacramento.
What does a yes mean?
Yes means you're eliminating the fee.
Yes, please.
Good, thank you.
Mr. Conley,
Yes.
Mr. Birchfield,
Yes.
Mr. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Trombley,
Yes.
Dr. Chesney,
Yes.
Mr. Stahl.
Yes.
Passes 6-0. And I hope we don't talk about the pool anymore.
I would agree.
Okay, item E, ground services, Dr. Gray.
It's our recommendation that we accept Northland Services for the bid of $238,949 for a 3-year contract. Go ahead.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support. Moved by Dr. Chesney, supported by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion?
Yes, I would like to amend the motion to postpone this because I know we had asked for some particular information. And I think the last meeting and the meeting prior, I certainly haven't seen that. And I believe that was in regards to the companies that were contacted about bidding this job.
I shared that with Mr. Birchfield. It was Cut and Care was the other one that came to the pre-bid walkthrough. So
No, that's not what was asked. What was asked were, what were the other companies that were contacted
Oh, okay.
to let them know that this was out as an RFP, and I haven't seen that information.
I'll have Dr. Casey send it to you, shoot in the RFP.
So we have a